On a cold November night in the year 1618, the sky over Europe lit up with an unknown light. It was not the brightness of fire nor the echo of battle, but a line of fire suspended in the celestial vault, a comet. Its bright tail dragged itself among the stars, so visible that peasants interrupted their prayers, nobles left their banquets, and priests lifted their gaze in fear of an omen. At that time, everything that came from the sky was read as a message, and this comet, a silent traveler of the cosmos, was about to unleash one of the most intense debates between reason and faith. For weeks, people watched that luminous body with a mixture of fascination and fear. Some said it announced the end of times. Others, the death of a king. In Rome, the rumor reached the corridors of the Vatican. The Pope and his astronomers began to discuss whether that phenomenon was a divine sign or a simple peculiarity of the firmament. And while temples filled with sermons speaking of God's punishment, in a workshop in Florence a man was observing the same sky, but with different eyes. His name was Galileo Galilei. Galileo, already known for his telescopes and discoveries, did not see in the comet a divine symbol, but a question. While others prayed, he calculated. He measured angles, wrote down movements, compared positions night after night. And he reached a conclusion that would scandalize half of Europe. Comets, he said, were not solid celestial bodies, but optical illusions, reflections of sunlight on atmospheric vapors. A daring idea, contrary to the treatises of the time and, above all, contrary to the dogmas that claimed that everything moving in the heavens was a perfect and immutable work of God. But Galileo was not alone in that discussion. From the Roman college, a young Jesuit named Orazio Grassi published a treatise asserting that the comet was a real body, a burning stone crossing space, and that its appearance should be interpreted as a divine warning. Grassi spoke with the backing of the church. Galileo, instead, with the arrogance of someone who trusted more in observation than in authority. The confrontation soon escalated, and the sky became the new battlefield of thought. The two men exchanged texts, mockery, and arguments. Grassi wrote that Galileo's observations were wrong, that his instruments were not trustworthy. Galileo responded with a book that would forever change the relationship between science and religion, Illinois Saggiatore, the Assayer, 1623. There, disguised in irony, he hid a passionate defense of the scientific method and a subtle mockery of his enemies. He wrote that nature was not to be read in sacred books, but in the mathematical language of the universe. And in those pages, between the lines, Galileo not only challenged Grassi, but also the Pope himself. Pope Urban VIII, who had been his friend and admirer, read those words and felt that the irony pointed at him. The man who had once protected him began to see him as a threat. The comet of 1618 had already vanished from the sky, but its trail was still burning in the offices of the Vatican. That distant glow had lit a flame that not even the inquisitors could extinguish. Meanwhile, in the streets of Rome, the story became distorted. Some said that the church had excommunicated the comet for daring to cross the sky without divine permission. Others said that the astronomers had debated its soul, as if a piece of fire could possess one. It was an exaggeration, of course, a satire born from popular rumor. But, like every joke, it contained an uncomfortable truth, that of an institution that preferred to condemn what it did not understand rather than accept it. Thus was born the expression that traveled from mouth to mouth, from city to city, the excommunicated comet. In that symbolic tale, the comet became something more than a body of ice and dust. It became a mirror that reflected humanity's fear of the unknown. Because deep down, what the church feared was not Galileo nor his formulas, but the power of knowledge to displace mystery towards reason. And Galileo, with his telescopes aimed at the sky, did not seek to confront God, but to understand his work with his own hands. In 1633, years after that phenomenon, the Inquisition's trial sealed his fate. The old Galileo, sick and exhausted, was forced to renounce his ideas. He was forbidden to teach, confined under house arrest, and his name was marked by the sin of curiosity. But while he murmured the famous phrase "Eppur si muove," and yet, it moves, the echo of that comet still floated in the air, reminding that the sky belongs to no one. The episode of the comet, though forgotten by many, was more than an astronomical anecdote. It was the symbol of a time when looking upwards was an act of rebellion. An era when men feared knowledge as much as they feared thunder. And it's curious to think of it that way. A simple comet, traveling from the edges of the solar system, managed to shake the certainties of an entire civilization. Today, we know that comets are not divine messages nor omens, but frozen travelers orbiting the sun for billions of years. But back then, a single one was enough to make the foundations of thought tremble. And the most fascinating thing is not the comet itself, but what it revealed about ourselves, our tendency to fear what we do not control, to disguise as mystery what we do not yet understand. Perhaps that is the silent lesson of the story. Every time a new idea crosses the sky of the human mind, it generates the same panic as that light of 1618. Science advances by lighting fires, and institutions, whether religious, political or cultural, try to put them out. But curiosity, like a comet's tail, always leaves a trail, even after it disappears from sight. Galileo died thinking of the sky. The Church, centuries later, admitted its mistake. And the comet, indifferent to the judgments of men, continued its eternal journey among the stars. Perhaps, somewhere in the universe, its bright tail still shines, reminding us that no excommunication can reach the truth, because truth, like a comet that defies the wind, always finds a way to rise again. And though fear may bring it down again and again, humanity will continue looking upward, trying to decipher that silent language that unites the divine with the unknown. Thus ends the story of the comet that defied the Church. A story that speaks not only of astronomy, nor only of religion, but of the inner fire that drives the human mind to ask why. Sometimes, faith looks to the heavens seeking signs. Science does so seeking answers. But deep down, both gazes are born from the same place, the desire to understand what lies beyond darkness. And as long as that desire exists, as long as someone on Earth keeps lifting their eyes with curiosity, the comet of 1618 will remain alive, not in the firmament, but in the memory of human thought. Because it was she, and not men, who reminded the world that the boundaries between faith and reason are not drawn in temples nor in observatories, but in the infinite sky they both share. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed learning about this extraordinary event, please consider subscribing for more videos about forgotten moments in history. There are countless stories like this one, brief, fascinating, and full of lessons about power, ambition, and humanity. Until next time, I'm your narrator, and this was when the Pope excommunicated a comet.